There's Flo, or you probably pronounce your name French if you're from France. Florian. Oh, I had French at school. I can probably pronounce Florian and say that I forgot my homework in French. Okay, then we have, oh damn, really bad with names again. Trying. Zbigniew. Oh, next time I mumble a bit and it will work out. Then we will have Jose. And can you tell us quickly, or me, because I wasn't here, what your talk was about this morning?
Should have been here, but it was about animations and how to, with really small pieces of code or let's say markup, you can do things that look great and complex.
I should have been here. I'm sorry, it's nothing against you personally, it's just tired.
I'll be checking next time.
Yeah, well, maybe next time we'll just put you at the end so I have a chance to see you. Maybe, you know, Volker's talk and Flo's talk. I saw that one, he put them in front. Alright, okay. Then we have Volker, who together with Flo gave the talk on building Android apps, you know, making your Gradle build slower so you don't have to do things manually. And Igor, who talked about unit testing. And now is your chance to ask them some questions, maybe about their talk, maybe also something completely unrelated, which they might have an interesting opinion on. Who wants to go first? Yes, okay.
So yeah, I wanted to ask Igor about that stuff. In my company, I have this problem, the company I'm working for, I have this problem about convincing people to actually use testing. Do you have maybe some ideas how can I improve them, and not by kicking them like, ah, guys, do this, it's worth.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a problem, and you say, okay, you tell people, okay, this is unit testing, this is the way it works, and they say, okay, I don't have time for that, it's fine for me, like, you know that. I don't have a clear answer how to convince anyone, I guess, because everyone has their own experience, you know, like, it's unfortunately religious sometimes, but try to show it by example, you know, like, if you test, if you are confident about your builds, if you're confident about your code, then it's faster, because people will say, okay, we're a small company, we don't have time actually to do tests, we change a lot. Well, okay, that's simply not true, because we also are a small company and we do unit testing, we do different kind of testing. We try to automate as much as possible, and it's, you know, in the long term, it really pays off, even in the midterm. So yeah, just, you know, if you can show it by example that, you know, the way you work, if you test, it's better architecture, it's faster, then yeah, maybe they will follow you. Otherwise, I don't know, yeah, you can try kicking them, or, you know, cutting the salary. Maybe that's a good incentive.
If any of you other speakers want to cut in, just grab the mic from him.
I can speak about, like, as somebody who has not done tests for a long time, and I started to like see the benefit and work with them lately, really lately, in fact. And I think the part where it pays more off is right when you have to maintain your product, when you release something and you have to work with it. Any kind of small thing that breaks, it's really a nightmare. And then every time that this happens, let's say you have to invest the time when developing or right after once to build a test, then if it already breaks, or if it already proves to be valid once, which I assure you will be, then you have already paid the price. But it will be not one, it will be 5 times, 10 times the times that you do regressions, that you'll have to go through the same things again. If you have the test, you can just pinpoint it. So that already in terms of time, economically speaking, it pays off right away, I'd say. But I'm definitely not the best person to speak about that, yeah.
So what I've observed quite a bit is the fear of change, right? So people, after a while, people like, you know, I don't want to touch that area of code if possible at all, you know, because I don't know what's going to happen, you know, and if there are some new bugs introduced, then I'm the one to blame, and that's clearly the problem if you don't have that safety guard, right? So I like to feel safe when I change something. I want to know if I break something because yeah, that's what we do.
Or you could just introduce a bug and then tell your boss, you know, this wouldn't have happened when we had unit tests.
That's actually a very good answer, go to your boss. But other thing is that we as a developer, especially Java developers, we like processes. So put a process in place where nothing can be merged when there is no test for it. A bit drastic, but it should work. If your boss thinks the same way.
I guess you have to get most bosses really drunk to agree to that. But once he agreed to or she agreed to it, it's probably a good strategy. Anyone else? Another question, maybe? You have a question? Yes. You can grab the other mic.
Yeah, it's about the same topic because I hear this a lot. Like we don't have the time, it's not worth investment, and I think it would be good if you had a way to bring in something quick that covers. You have to have entire coverage, you have to have acceptance tests or integration tests, all the way. So I wonder if you could suggest or advise for something that could have you or could put you in a good position without too much investment. Maybe just relying on unit tests for very specific parts of your code that could like somehow address that.
Yeah, I mean, if you say, okay, I want to develop with unit tests, and I want to spend time in engineering organization, and you know, if you try to do that, you say, okay, we do tests, but you don't have too much experience, like with unit testing, then you know you would fail, and you would put a black mark on the concept of testing. So, like, I would suggest you start slowly, step by step, and you get confidence with it, and you get really to a point where you can apply it really good, and then of course we can talk about bad boss, like stupid boss, but like if you have a great engineering leadership, then it's out of the question whether we should unit test, whether we should use automated testing or not. Like it's never a question when your organization is well built. If you're like CTO or your architects, they know that. So yeah, so I guess the most important part is to be confident and to be able to show like this works. Like I'm really confident about my builds, about my changes, about my releases, and then you can convince people if they are not stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, so to get back on this, so before joining Novoda, I never did any tests. So I think it would be a really great way when you are like writing a bit of code and you're like, okay, so this code needs to be tested. So actually this is what I did with Antonio here. And so I had to write some kind of formatter, like we had a really big number and we needed to have some kind of like, okay, this number should be formatted like this, if the number is between this and that, and differently if it's between this and that, and then it should be only 5 characters long, and really strict rules. And so what I did is what I was doing before, like just diving directly into the code and then trying to hack something and see if it works manually. And so basically with Antonio, so what I did is like, okay, so we take the first rule, then we try to make it work, and then we iterate on that. And I think if we like show this to your coworker, would be a really great way to like get him into like testing, because actually I was really more confident about the code I just wrote, and I saw that it actually was working. Yeah. So this is my point of view as someone who, like 4 months ago, didn't have written any test. So,
yeah, I mean, just to add a little bit, maybe what will help you is that you don't see testing and developing production code as 2 separate things. Because, like, we are in our organization to the point where we believe that, like, it's one single activity. You write production code and then you test it, or like, the other way around if you use TDD. So, like, it's not, then it doesn't become a question like whether you should do it or not. It's like, given that when you develop, you write tests, and you always verify that. So it shouldn't be separated. You shouldn't think of it like a separate activity when you are developing. It should be like a part of your workflow.
It's a question. How much love do you give to your tests? Do you consider that as part of your, at the same level of your production code? Do you refactor your tests? Do you experiment with new things? Do you try to get more and more confident extending what you already have? Yes, no, without the best practices in that.
Yeah, I mean, again, I consider tasks to be part of the, of workflow, and then we apply the same good practices as for production code. So if you have, I mean, of course, tasks can be a bit different. So you might sacrifice, some good practices for readability if it helps to read the tests, every single example. But usually, yeah, we treat them like part of our code, and then we follow the same guidelines, the same principles, and we try to keep them clean, are easy to understand, easy to change. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, surely you have to take the same care as with your production code. But I just want to mention again, since it's not just you do test, you can do a lot of bad things to your tests as well, right? So tests can really slow you down. So you shouldn't say just test and then everything is fine at once. That's just not true, right? So that's not, at least not what I've experienced at times. So testing. Good testing is really the black art, because you have to find the line. What do I really test, and what is implementation detail I don't really care about, and that's takes a lot of practice, I think so.
Okay, more audience questions. Is it about testing, Hassan? No? Okay, maybe then a question for the audience. Who uses test-driven development? Like really strict test-driven development? Okay, so we have half a hand back there. So kind of test-driven development, that's I guess one hand, 2, 3, 4, okay. Okay, then yeah, sure, I write code and sometimes I write tests. Okay, that's even more. I guess that's good. Okay, now the really hard question. I guess nobody wants to admit to that, but who doesn't write tests at all? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Man. Okay. Are you motivated to change this now? Okay, one of the 5 or 6 people. Okay, I guess that's thanks to you.
So one question regarding Marshmallow. What you hate most of the new Marshmallow release? Permissions. Just one word? As I hate it as a developer for sure. I'm not sure about the user, from the user part. Like I always protect very well the way Android was using it. I specifically see, I don't like the experience when the user has decided to do something and it's relatively urgent, and then you put something in the way that is not expected. I think this undermines the experience. I know this is kind of controversial, and it goes against what the reasons that why Google brought it in. But this is something, if I'm in the rain, if I'm trying to get a car or something like that, something that I really want to do now and I've already decided, if I get 2 pop-ups, I will be like really pissed, I guess. But yeah, I see it also like the other side. I mean, I've added in my project. I had to do it, and it's there, yeah.
Okay, what about the others?
Well, I mean, I hate it's not there, it's not on my phone yet. So, I mean, for me, it's not, I mean, not about Marshmallow, but that the devices don't get updated to it so, fast as, say, on iOS. And then you have these fragmented environments where you think, okay, some users have that behavior, some users have another behavior, and it becomes really, really complicated. So I wish like updates would come, even to older phones, and as a user and as developer.
Yeah, I think the permission stuff is a bit challenging for us developers, right? But it's actually a great thing for the users, I think. So it's kind of mixed feelings. So the feature is quite nice. I think they introduced some, maybe it's not inconsistencies, but some apps just break on Marshmallow because of some slight changes, not quite compatible with earlier stuff. So I kind of, as a developer, I don't like that very much. That used to be better actually. That worked quite well back in the days with the earlier versions. That the old stuff would just continue working mostly. I don't, some specific. I don't know. I read about some permission changes, and I think even Wojtek showed some in his tips and tricks some weird behavior changes with Marshmallow. So it's some little quirks.
My experience actually is exactly opposite. I don't hate it. For me, it didn't change anything. I haven't seen any real problem with it. It's exactly opposite of what I just said, because I haven't seen any issues. And before, I had a lot of them. Before, on every release, I had to actually update my app. Now I'm not planning to do it.
When you say you didn't have to update it, you probably didn't implement support for the new runtime permissions.
Yeah, and of course, I don't really need to do it. Well, user just has a warning. This app doesn't support that. Don't do it because it will break.
I see. Yeah, but at some point you probably have to.
Maybe. Yeah, but before there were releases where it was actually breaking stuff and my app was crashing. Now it isn't.
Okay, Flo. What about you?
Yeah, so I had Marshmallow on my phone since some months now. I don't know, I like it, but I didn't fiddle with it as a developer, like with the new permission system, so I'm not sure. But I quite like the new permission system. Like, yeah, I'm not sure. We have to see if it's really complicated to implement as a developer or not. Not sure yet.
Okay, maybe a quick question. Who of you has already updated their app or apps for the new permissions? Yeah, show of hand is enough, I guess. So just one. Awesome. Yeah, I guess we have 5 more years until we really need to. Any audience questions? Okay, of course, all the way in the back. And there are 3 seats in the front, if you want to change.
Hi guys. You have been talking before about the model we presented that I find that is perfect for the presentation layer, even small apps. For testing is perfect. But what about behind the model we presented, behind the presentation layer? Are you guys using or following some clean architecture, hexagonal architecture, onion architecture, activity architecture or something like that?
I can speak for myself. I have a combination of things, I'd say, depending on the use case. In some places, I'm just having, let's say, dedicated pool of threads, as simple as that. In some others, I'm using repository pattern really heavily as well, when I have to deal with information that's coming from the outside that needs to be cached, maybe. Clean architecture, I think it's a broad term. I wouldn't say I'm using it just like that. But if you're speaking about development patterns as well, it really depends on the case. There's more the patterns that I possibly try to avoid. But you would say things like, I don't know, repository a lot, composition, I try to not to abuse, depends on things like on like main pipes like Bombast and things like that. But there's nothing really specific on my side.
Yeah, so I'm still wondering what clean architecture is in that sense, right? It's an architecture. So we certainly try to keep our code clean, whatever that means, right? There's the clean code book, if you mean that, yeah, we try that, of course. And we try to separate modules, right? So clear boundaries and try to enforce that at the feature level or module level. And yeah, if you want to call that architecture, then that's what we try to do.
Yeah, I mean, you can see a lot of articles on that probably lately. Yeah, but I guess the core of what we try to do is so we have these levels separated like views, data, networking. So you can see this picture in internet, this circle of layers, and the dependencies shouldn't be two-way dependencies between view layer and data layer. Otherwise, it's not good. So we try to separate data, networking, and what we do also, like if we have, say, layer which talks to API, and then we have the same data which we save to database, then we try to have separate models, and we treat API sort of like independent library, independent framework, and then the same goes for data. So we try to make it independent from outside. I guess, yeah, that's what we try to do. It pays off. So if you want them to change, one model, then you're not affected by, in another layer.
Yeah, I, in general, don't really know how to answer this question because I have my ways of doing stuff, but it's hard to name it. I work with Scala, so I do a lot of things differently. It's more about maybe some rules of design, not so much architecture, like keeping your app offline. Like, there's nothing like online on mobile. Everything should work on offline. So my applications are usually heavily based on local storage, which is the center of the app, and UI basically just displays the current state in the storage. And then there's syncing on the side. We don't do, pretty much never do network requests from UI there on demand. We usually go through the storage, and this imposes some changes in architecture, but it's hard to name it.
Yeah, so I work with Volker, so I pretty much think like what he said. So yeah, basically we have multiple sub-projects, so a mobile sub-project where we put like everything that is Android related, and then a core module that is not related to Android at all that we can test separately. And then we have like another sub-project where we can like fiddle with like the API client and verify that everything is working correctly as we said in the talk, which is quite useful to like detect, okay, so we are receiving weird data, it's not supposed to be like this, it's a server issue, or okay, the data seems to be fine, so then it's an issue that is our fault. And then yeah, it's trying to really separate the concern, trying to not have activities, fragments that are like 1,000 lines long, so using presenter, renderer, yeah, that's about it.
Maybe what's interesting about the architecture thing is that now even on mobile we have this trend to features, right? So we have this, it's kind of coming from the server guys, they have all these feature teams now, Spotify is doing it and everybody else starts doing it now as well, I think. And it will be interesting how this affects the architecture actually on Android as well, and this will be probably something that will come up in the next 2 years more, that will, how to enable this kind of feature teamwork on Android specifically, because then you will need some core infrastructure and you will have to make sure that all the features fit in nicely into that space. So it's going to be interesting, I think.
I don't know, anyone seen Mobile Architect ever? Like, I guess it's starting to appear because we have like really, really big apps, complex applications, but most of the times we just are not governed by, big picture, like these good practices. We just try to build on top of what we see, these tutorials where everything is, in one class file, there is like no separation. Yeah, but I guess we are getting slowly, but we are getting like to these good practices. More and more people are interested in how to build scalable applications. So I mean, of course, it's not that bad as it was like 5 years ago. So.
But I also think that it makes sense to bring this up because I think when we see some sort of trends like those, it's like, okay, we are here, we're asking you, and you say your architecture. Then I go home, I build an app which is going to be a sample app with 2 activities, and then I start doing reference stories and MVPs and then MVVM. And I think we have to be somehow try to be sensible in which are our needs. Like if you have a complex app with many different layers talking to your networking API, or you also have 3 kinds of caching, then in that case, then you will benefit from these things that we have been speaking about. But that doesn't mean that you have to create 20 classes to show one view if your app doesn't really need it. I think sometimes we let ourselves go by these trends or what we read or what we see. And I personally have this opinion. I don't know if that's like really a personal opinion that you have to see really what you need. If you have just to call to your API, sometimes it is okay to store a file on a plain JSON file in your SD card if you don't need to do queries, or you can just make a call in a loader if you just need to make one call to login, something like that.
I have just a little follow-up question to Igor, because you said you have separated network and data. In your network layer, do you use special TTOs? And in your presentation or data layer, do you map it to business object or something like that? Or do you directly use the data transfer objects?
Yeah, so we have a data layer, and we have API layer, and we have business logic. And so 3 layers, and they all have different models, right? And we kind of were forced to do that because we used ORM library in data layer, and then using the same model, which is automatically generated, was kind of, not a good practice. But then, yeah, I can see a benefit in it. Like, especially, like, we don't have this now, like, having data and API in a separate module. But I think we want to go there, and I see much benefit in having separate models for every layer.
Thanks.
Okay, I will try to keep track of all the questions. Antonio, thanks.
If there is any library that you have used, let's say, in the last year, that you consider something that you want to push forward for the next project, something that you consider a must-have, because it's like the benefit of including that is much more valuable than, I don't know, the size or whatever. If there is any, what is your suggestion?
Yeah, I mean, I would say Weak Canary from Jake Wharton and Square. Yeah, I mean, it's used for detecting memory leaks. And before, I guess it was really, really painful. You would go to this, you could dump memories and you would try to analyze it. But now, like, it tells you where you have a memory leak. Not always 100% clear, but still it helps a lot. So even if you try to include it in your project, and you think you don't have memory leaks, then maybe you would see that you actually have some. I guess it's really, really helpful.
Yeah, I like the little toolings. I was like Warmer because of all the little toolings, and I like auto value a lot these days. And it's just you can generate your equals hash code or not to string or so. But the nice part is that you really have to think about your values, and you really have to, because you cannot fiddle with all these, I'll change a little, no, I don't want to put that into my hash code because, that might break something or something. So you really have to clearly separate these things, and that's kind of enforced by this little tool, so that's why I like it.
So the question was about a library that you would include, or what do you do? What do you do if you want to include a library?
Let's put like your favorite library at the moment, something that you think is a must-have.
I really like Guava, but I cannot use this all the times. Like I've seen myself adding it somehow by default, something you shouldn't do. And then it's a pretty massive one, and especially in terms of it has a few number of hundreds of methods, so it collides with you know, this limit that I'm personally trying to avoid because you have all those shortcomings coming. I like event bus, but I try to push myself away from it because I think it promotes sometimes if you slack, it promotes bad architecture, bad programming patterns. And there's also Yoda time, but the thing is that I get excited about libraries and then I'm disappointed because of something for some reason. Yoda time is really convenient to handle dates and times and relative times. But then there was an issue that when you were loading, when you were doing time zone conversions, it was loading the entire library of UTC zones and tables. It's pretty much really complex tables, and it was doing this on the main thread. So the reason why I found it is that my app got a bump at some point. I didn't know where it was coming. It was coming from Jota time. It made me upset, and I completely removed it. I shouldn't have done that. I should analyze problems and don't get upset and take extreme measures. But yeah, that was also one that was useful. Date library support for Android.
So there's a port for Android, right, for the Jota time, I think.
Nice. They fixed that there. Should check it out.
I basically have two libraries that I always include. First is, of course, Scala library, and it takes care of most of the stuff. Dependency injection is very easy with Scala. And the second one is this async network library, because, well, currently with new devices, async is not so much significant, but I still use it as a rule. Having less threads is always better.
Is the library from Kushik?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I would say also Guava, but because I really like all these little helpers that like save you some lines and some copy this function across all my classes. But yeah, so just make sure that you can like write a strict version of Guava, like just putting the class you actually need. So yeah, just make sure that you are respectful of your text count limit.
So you have a little helper to strip down your little helpers?
No, just like putting the class you actually need.
Questions? Also one that I add almost by default all the time is HTTP. Like if I need to do new work and it's like pretty, obvious.
To be honest, I'm surprised that nobody mentioned direct Java.
No, that's pretty complex.
Seems like a kind of cool thing.
Yeah, personally, I feel like guilty. I think I should look into it, but I'm also like biased to see if maybe going to Scala is going to, going to have more potential and solve similar problems.
Yeah, I kind of like that one. I mean, we use it, but still I'm quite scared sometimes about that beast, when you drill into the details. Because the problem is, at some point it can get really complex, and I wonder if that really, you can understand it of course, but yeah, it's not, sometimes it's not really communicating as well, to me at least, might be me. So
you probably all heard it, but can you repeat it for the video recording? What Antonio said?
So the question was why nobody mentioned RX Java. My feelings about that one.
Yeah, I mean, generally I became interested in everything which uses compile time annotation processing, so which generates the code during compile time with annotations. And I think like when you use annotations for a lot of stuff, your code becomes sort of declarative, and you see like repetitive patterns in your code, and becomes easier, like butter knife, dagger. I don't know. It would be nice if there was something for databases for generating database code for you, like, or in compile time. I guess there are a lot of libraries which utilize it lately, and I hope more will come. Actually, maybe develop some myself.
Question to all the guys. If I'm not wrong, I think Benjamin was giving a really nice talk on latest AndroidCon about functional programming on Android, and especially RxJava and Kotlin in particular. So what's the current status of this inside of your team? Do you use Kotlin in production, or do you keep an eye on it, or how's that?
So we don't use it yet in production, but yeah, there are quite a few guys that are having a close eye on it. You know, I'm not one of them yet. I mean, it's interesting, yeah, but I personally haven't looked into it yet. But I guess I should, right? How about you guys?
I also should. Nothing to say, unfortunately.
Well, I already repeat myself. I don't need to use Kotlin because I have more powerful language. But yeah, if you're afraid of, well, that's true. There's a lot of stuff there. If you're afraid of the library or something, then yeah, Kotlin is a very good step for the beginning. But if you want to create something powerful, something good libraries, then you use Scala.
Okay, we have a question from our tech guy up there. You can wave to him. He messaged me to ask you how you see the future of programming languages on Android. So right now we're kind of stuck with Java 1.6 if you use Java, or some brave souls who use Scala. There's also Kotlin now. He also wrote JavaScript in here. I'm not sure what he was thinking there, but what's your take on this?
What about Dart? I think that, well, this question has been asked to Googlers many times, and they always try to not to respond, so I guess there's not much progress coming from that. Although I see that there's Kotlin coming into play, Scala, different libraries, different programming languages kind of feel like they're breaking the ice, and maybe they cause a chain effect doing something what has happened in other platforms. So I would expect, and I think that would be in fact a good thing. Yeah, personally, I'm not sure. It's hard for me to foresee that. I think it can go honestly in any direction. But what we see can be a representation of what's happening. Wouldn't have an expectation for Java though. I don't see that as something that Googlers are putting much emotion into.
So have you guys seen the talk of the ProGuard guy? I forgot the name, Eric Lafortune, and he was talking about the Jack and Jill tool chain lately, and you know, from looking at that, it seems that we might even get closures into Android, probably only as inner classes then, you know, some syntactic trippers, so not maybe as nice as Java 8. But the point is that this converts Java source code directly to DEX code, and that might mean that all other toolings are a bit off, because they would need to provide their own translator again, and that might take a while. So it's probably Java for now and for the near future, but I think the midterm, the tooling will be determined by how good it supports the cross-platform development, and I think that will have a bigger impact in the future, because it's probably just too expensive as it works now, right? Or custom.
Yeah, if you take a look at the dark side, like iOS guys, like Swift was introduced how many, 2 years ago, and still it's not fully adopted. So my biggest fear is that, you know, if we try to use Kotlin right now, which is not officially backed by Google, then it might take even more time, and then we will have, you know, sort of late adopters, early adopters. Yeah, so I'm not sure, actually. I don't think that Google is going to introduce like official support for Kotlin anytime soon, so it's like kind of still shady.
gave microphone because I wanted to think about it. And yeah, in general, I'm not too optimistic about future of languages on Android. I think we will be stuck with Java forever. Hopefully we will get Java 8 or part of it at some point, but I don't think we will get anything else there. Yeah, not optimistic.
Yeah, so by JavaScript, I think the guy was thinking about React. Yeah. And so yeah, at DroidCon UK I saw this very interesting talk about React by someone from Facebook. So sounds quite interesting, but I don't know. I guess we'll see if it dies or not in the next few months. It seems to be quite kind of mature for now, but I'm not sure. I'm always afraid with this thing like to write half of the app and then just it can be done and then you just throw out all your app and then start again from scratch using the native language. So yeah, I'm not sure. I guess we'll see in the next few months what happened with React and if it works or not.
Okay, so I guess we're out of time. Thanks a lot to all of our speakers.
Quick one.
Yes.
Minus the K version.
Oh.
So in our current apps 14?
In personal projects 9.
16.
15.
16.
23. No, just kidding. Okay, thanks a lot to all of our speakers.